Hello, I am the awkward GM Corbin. Thank you so much for joining us. And I realized I was streaming before I was actually live. Thank you for tuning in. If you are interested in checking out Curseborne, I will say that I am doing this from some previous streams that I used to do on Sunday. Those streams I wasn't able to do in the last 2 weeks. One for personal reasons, and another because we had Easter, I believe. Any case, thank you all for joining. Now, I've posted it all on the socials. I'm live. Everything is going good. Hopefully, I can actually turn off that page. I have everything working here on my side. I'm not used to streaming on YouTube. I do apologize for that. That is just the nature of YouTubing. I'm used to Twitch because I do a lot of stuff over on Onyx Path's Twitch channel, which, if you are not interested in Curseborne, you can check out. They're doing the They Came From the RPG Anthology, which is one of my palate cleanser games, because I like games like urban fantasy type games like Curseborne, but sometimes I need something maybe a little similar with a little bit of a different theme, a little bit of a different twist. And then I'll go over and do something like They Came From the RPG Anthology, where I did They came from the billiards room with the candlestick, which is kind of like a Clue or Cluedo if you're from Europe or the UK. Murder mystery whodunit. Pretty fun. I also, point of fact, I got a green screen. I'm still trying to get it like keyed properly, but it might just be a wrong type of green, which would be insane. And I mean, at least it looks like I've got nothing behind me. Almost nothing behind me. Thank you for being a viewer. In any case, let me show you off what I've done so far with my Curseborne planning. I'm doing Cursed in Boston. I got official sign off from Onyx Path that I'll be able to be doing it. I'm going to try and do it on their Twitch streams in May. Maybe I'll figure out how to get them over here on YouTube afterwards. Last time I did, I was able to get them episodes a week after they went live and post them on YouTube, which is awesome. But in any case, last where we left off, I was sort of like going through plotting out my campaign. I've changed my notes significantly since then. I did have a lot of information in regards to like where the variety of the different accursed society was, and I drive Cursed in Boston. Is that all the plotting? Oh no. I have thrown off a lot of my notes on this. Apologies. So, I did do a thing where my wife and I went over where we thought all the different accursed will go. And if you are unfamiliar, if you're familiar with my notes from before where I was doing that stuff, I did a few minor tweaks. Mainly, I'll try and go over them as quickly as I can. I apologize for that. We have a few blank spots in here. First up, we did the dead, and we were trying to figure out where to put them. And my wife suggested we do Southie because that's where a lot of like criminal activity was, and there are a lot of abandoned buildings and factories down there. The Mavens, who are your sort of like adrenaline junkie, I like to call them ghosts. We put them in Somerville because they're a little bit counterculture-y. Poltergeists, we put them in Lowell, near the North End. It's where kind of like I think revolutionary people in Little Italy. No, Lowell we went with Lowell because there were mill buildings. The North End is a different thing. I think I'm settling on Lowell for the moment, but honestly, the North End probably would be better because it would be more the Boston area. Shades, my wife couldn't give me a good idea for that. She's my Boston expert, which is why I chose her as my Boston expert. Um, Wardens, we gave the medical area because it sounded like they were sort of like Munchausen's by proxy types. And then we got the Zeds, where they're in the financial district because they're sort of more corporate. When we did the Hungry and I gave her that stuff, the aesthetics seem to be very much like moving a little bit over the place, not really settled into one specific area, but they're all about the memories. So we chose the Freedom Trail, which kind of winds its way throughout Boston, which is a giant thing. It's a long path, but it's like if they just stick to that route, they kind of like have territory worming its way, slithering its way throughout Boston. Uh, Blackhearts, I said that they're mercenary emotional vampires, emo vampires. So they got Hanscom Air Force Base area, which is actually a lot further north than Boston. Maybe I have to rearrange that a little bit, but right now it works. Gaki, we gave Mount Auburn because of the necromancy stuff. House Bathrite, we gave Back Bay. South Boston, they're totally not getting. They're sticking to South Back Bay, which is a more new money type area in Boston. It has a lot of high end shops. And if you're familiar with Newbury Comics, that's where Newbury Comics is from. It's from Newbury Street over in Back Bay. Then you have the Heirs, which are on Beacon Hill, which is sort of like this older money where senators live type place. Iscariots, we decided to give them Government Center Tea Stop as a place that they would probably settle in. It makes sense, like narratively. And then Verare, my wife couldn't figure out one for that. Those are the people who are like sort of like deals with the devil's types who deals with the devil types who make their own, like, they eat souls basically is where I'm getting at. Outcast, you have the keepers of the broken vine, who are sort of like, I think they're mentioned as sort of like being Edenists, which is an idea that they're beings that take care of the Garden of Eden or other sort of mystical gardens in history and mythology and religion. So Boston Public Gardens seemed like a place that they would be at. We had the Munificents, who are sort of your genie type people, and Theater District sounded good for them. League of the Hidden Crossroads, we gave them the Greenway. Get where the Greenway is. I'm not too familiar with that part. Then Battleground Angels, we gave one of the national parks, Fort Warren, I believe we went with, because we wanted to give them something that was more militarily set up. And of course, we then go down to our primal, where we have the 8 Hands, which is one of the groups that my players is doing. 8 Hands, we decided would be JP because it has a huge Latin community there, specifically because of their nickname, the Ocho, and the Jackson Square area, which might have changed its name due to Jackson Square being named after a bad guy. Get of Leica, we chose Franklin Park Zoo because that's sort of more like a natural area where you might see wolves or coyotes. More likely see coyotes. But allows them to hide out and hunt and things of that nature. We chose for the hides MIT, and we gave the spawn of Vodnik the aquarium area. Sphinx, we gave the Haymarket area because it's kind of near some historical graveyards and there's cobblestone streets. Kind of felt like a place they would be. Raptors, we didn't really get to, and I don't think we had a good solution for where they might be. They're sort of primeval. They're kind of primeval lizard, feathered reptile creatures, and I'm still a little bit on the fence on like what I think about them. They're clearly representative of like I think one of the like Aztec god type character like beings in that culture, but I'm not gonna say for certain. But there's definitely like some history to that narrative of like turning into this feathered reptile that I would need to look into more. Sorcerers, we got a lot more finished. We got archivists who would probably be at the Boston Public Library at Copley Square. You have the faceless who would be at T station stops because they're criminals. And I would say the T station, even though it's like perfectly fine for a city, is probably a place where a lot of people will make deals and like travel throughout the city pretty quickly, which made sense for them. The network, we decided to go with Harvard Square because that's where like people from Harvard network and oftentimes talk with each other. So it's like a bustling part of the city. Then you have the premiere, and we decided to go with maybe Weston or Martha's Vineyard. I am not familiar where Martha's Vineyard actually is. I've never been, but that seemed to work. Reeves, they were another one of those. They probably are in one of the park areas in Boston, so we decided to go with Blue Hills Reservation. And then the Unburdened, we decided to go with JP Center Street because the Unburdened are very, countercultural types, and like there's a huge like population in JP that is very much like you're sort of like gentrified. Like I don't want to say gentrified because it's like it's more like there are a lot of thrift stores, like upscale thrifts, not upscale, but like there are a lot of thrift stores in JP, and I could see people like work like an Unburdened going to those places. There are two main ones on like within walking distance of each other. There used to be. There's Boomerangs, and I think what was the other one? Oh, God, Goodwill. Goodwill was right next there. It's a pretty nice area. I like it. Any case, those were my thoughts. And when I got into deciding, like, I started asking around my players what type of characters do they actually want to play as, and one of them came back pretty quickly with they wanted to play Battleground Angels. So I gave them this document that I sent to them, which has some information about them. I gave them a little introduction here, which is from the head of human resources in the Battleground Angels. I did want it to be more like a family, so even though it is run sort of like a military contractor company, they do have like family words that they use, like, oh, you're like part of our corporate family and things of that nature. Precision, protection, and purpose. I will say I did get this from like just sort of like spitballing with ChatGPT, and it did seem like a cool, interesting turn of phrase. So the 3Ps for the Boston Archangel Tactical Systems Company or whatever. We have our overview here of like what they are, exactly what I said. They recruit people for the cause. And then I did delve a little bit into the branches of the family. Battleground Angels do have 4 separate subfamilies within them. You have the Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel subfactions or branches. And what I had put in there was that at 18, some of the family members will choose to like take on one of the names of an archangel, usually as like the middle name or the last name for people. But oftentimes, people will do like to blend in better so that people aren't like finding out that, oh, you're actually one of the Battleground Angels. They'll do variations on it. And I had a lot of them for Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, but when it came to Uriel, I'm like, all I can think of is Yuri and Ursula. There are not many U names. Maybe there are in different cultures and I'm just like blanking on it. Eustace. Is Eustace Is Eustace with a U or is it with an H? It's probably with an H. In any case, um, and I put a little joke in here for the number of Michael S's in the Michael branch is staggering because I work with a lot of Michaels at my own job. And it's so bad that like we can't use like their last name being like, oh, it's Michael P or Michael B, because there are just too many Michaels with the with the same last name, with the last name that starts with the same letter. I did add in here troublemakers within the family. This is something I didn't really go into in the text of Curseborne. It's my own personal homebrew where if there's someone who is part of the family and isn't a direct enemy of the family, there is definitely something that they would like. They would still work with the family when shit hit the fan, but they probably aren't like the best child or best person working with the family. I wanted to give them a little bit of a, okay, you're a little bit of a troublemaker, but hey, if you want to still work with the family, you can still do that. Just it's like tensions are high with you sometimes, but not hostile to the point where they're going to kill you. So for the Battleground Angels, I put in Lucy or Lucifers as the troublemakers within the family. This means basically that you don't have support from the family. You can't really get stuff from the arsenal of the Battleground Angels. But because you're not actively going against the family, you're avoiding capital punishment like or execution. Your main obligation to the family, I have that listed here as well, is that you must support monthly excursions into the battlegrounds, because if you don't, the battlegrounds are probably gonna, like, outsiders from the battlegrounds are gonna try to take over the city, and that's a bad thing, and you know it. And if you don't do that one major obligation, you might be like targeted for assassination or something like that. However, there are other obligations such as following orders from your superiors and being on call for support for field agents. So if you're part of the medics, which are the Raphael, you must be on call to perform medical assistance to anyone who's out in the field that might be injured. I did create my own sort of like cool little weapon here. I went and I created the Flaming Sword of Justice. It is a staple of any angel's arsenal. When sheathed, the sword is no different than any other sword. When unsheathed, the flame is wreathed. The edges of the flame are wreathed with fire. And then you can do slashing. When you slash the air, it does sort of like the effect that like I would say like Kirby's like slash does in Super Smash Brothers, where it just like sends a wreath of flames in front of you, except in Kirby's case, it's like an energy blast. I I kind of like that idea, and I wanted to incorporate it into this design. Next up, we had one player who really wanted to do House of Bathory. It was really fun talking to them about it because they had played House of Bathory before. Bathory before. I give a little introduction, and I used the character who is the sire from my Family Feud actual play that I did, which you can find a playlist in my on my channel, which is hopefully in the right order now because I made a mistake and put them out of order in the playlist. In any case, though, so I stole that NPC, made the NPC the person who gave the introductory message to the player. We haven't decided on character creation stuff yet, so my players know that they're going to be this family, but they don't know what character they're playing yet or what theme we're going with the game. Usually my games tend to lean more towards investigator-focused ones, but sometimes we do get a little bit mercenary, so we'll see where things go. In any case, I did give them an overview of what House Bathory tends to do. They have a lot of parties and clubs and things like that. I have here that they hold court in Back Bay near Newbury Street. I did have a problem. So with the leadership, I did just go with Westinghouse from my old game as the leader of the vampires for the moment. But I probably shouldn't do that. I probably should go for something a little bit more newcomer friendly for the viewers. But I did. The other problem was I couldn't think of family branches because I was so focused on like, oh, the Bathorites are very much like this one thing, and it got in my head, and I couldn't remove myself from it. I did give them troublemakers, but they're really not like troublemakers in the sense of they're not following the orders of the house. Instead, they're more like still tied to their original family. So their old life. You have people like, oh, I've just been turned into a vampire. I want to hang out with my friends and family from my life. And it's like, well, you'll just grow out of it. So they're not like going to enforce that as much as like the battleground angels are because they're soldiers, but they're definitely going to be doing something to the effect of like being like, oh, you should probably maybe you should just be a little bit more like a vampire and less like someone who's still alive. We have the obligations, which is just that there's a monthly gala that you have to attend. Usually, someone whose sire is trying to move up in the family hierarchy will be given the job of getting things done for the planning of the event. If you prove that your child can be trusted, then you must also be trustworthy. And I also created the mirrored bathtub, which is a bathtub that you fill up with the blood of an individual, and those who bathe in the blood will take on that person's likeness until the next sunrise or sunset. I do believe that there might be a change in the rules in regards to the Bathorites, or well, not in the Bathorites, in regards to the Hungry. I'm not sure about that, because I do know that the whole sunrise stuff has changed over the course of some of the iterations of it. I think it was like if you use your hungry powers in the ash can, you get the bane of not being able to be in sunlight or something. But then I think it changed with the release of the manuscript. I'm not sure. I would have to double check that. I'm reading that manuscript a lot. Oh, thank you, Lava Bean, for being on the stream. How much of the official setting does Curseborne have at the moment? Is there anything you are adjusting to be different from how it's described officially? Yes, so I'm definitely adjusting to it as much as I can. The setting itself, for the most part, at the low level, so if you're thinking of like starting out as one of the accursed, that's pretty much settled now. A lot of it's like you're a new person to being turned into one of the accursed, so one of the hungry, one of the primals, and now like you're dealing with a lot of low level threats and things of that nature, and the politics of of your family from a very like position of lower power, I would say. The thing that I'm not too familiar with is how elders are. There is information from sort of this younger accursed point of perspective, and I say younger, but what I really mean is like newer compared to the other accursed. So you might be an old vampire of like 100 years old, but you might still be I think it's entanglement, which is their power level 1. And but that's because your elder vampire is like 500 years old or something like that. So there is information about that and what elders are like narratively, but there aren't rules mechanically so far as to what elders are capable of. So what I have to do as a GM is often like make calls on the fly as to like the power level the elders are going to have. So that's something I'm adjusting to right now because we don't really know what's going on with that officially. Similarly, the Fae are a entity that gets mentioned a lot in Accursed, and while that is awesome because I love the Fae, I love Changeling the Lost when that came out. The Fae don't have rules really. There are a few antagonists in the book that get mentioned that are related to the Fae. They are either servants or like low-level Fae creatures that interact with people. But other than that, we don't really have rules for what the Fae are or how they interact with the world differently than the Accursed. I hope that explains that. The setting itself is very much akin to like, we're not making grandiose statements about the world. We are making statements about the various different families, and you can make adjustments yourself as you feel necessary. Thank you, Lava Bean, for your question. And I really liked making these little gifts for my players. So like the mirrored bathtub. And this stuff for the arsenal that I'm giving to my players is stuff they have access to as heirlooms, which means that they would have to take, I think, an edge or an ability in order to actually like use them, as opposed to me just giving it to them for free. Lastly, for my players, we have the 8 hands, which are also known as the Ocho, which gives them a little bit of a Spanish Mexican vibe to them. I really think of Morticia Adams when I think of them. And I had to stop myself from making a character in the world that is literally called Morticia. That name just really, I like that name a lot. In any case, I put in the name of a character that was an NPC in my Family Feud game again, Amarilla Gomez, who I might just refer to as Gomez during the game. Yeah, if you have any other questions, Lava Bean, just ask away. I'm going to be on for like another half an hour. The 8 hands is often referred to as the Ocho, so I gave an overview here of them being like, they're essentially gang members, with the higher parts of the membership being the elder parasites. In the book, elder Ocho are often referred to as parasites, even though, like, as far as the antagonists go, parasites are actually like the hungry parasites are what they're referred to. And yes, Lava Bean, this definitely does, the Ocho, calling them the Ocho reminds me of the ESPN spin-off channel The Ocho, which was in Dodgeball. The one thing I wanted to get across for this player, because they had never played Curseborne before, was that the 8 hands don't have mentors that are trusted, because they're probably going to die. They're probably going to be eaten by their mentor, similar to like how praying mantises, the male's head gets cut off during mating season. But in this case, apparently the elder primal, not just the Ocho, but primal in general, will eventually die. They are not undead, and they're not immortal, and they don't have ways of extending their life except by eating or ritually killing the younger members of their society or family. So the parasites of the Ocho are giant spider-like beings that are old and feed on the young often. So I created that. I made sure my player got that. I got that across to my player. Additionally, I made sure to mention that they have this metaphorical interconnected web of contacts that they link themselves to. So one of their abilities that they have, I think it's their inheritance, maybe, is essentially that they can use other people's contacts even if they're like not in the same room. It is very important that they have these connections, because it's sort of like a web of connections. And there's this whole web of information and all this other stuff. I created my own branches. I had the cobwebs, which are 8 hands who hang out more in abandoned buildings and try and catch urban explorers and homeless people who are hanging out, maybe criminals who are using abandoned buildings for criminal activities. And then the Silkweave, who are people who tend to lure their victims into homes and more and apartments, maybe even I might put in there like hotels, motels, things where basically like it's a private building that they can feast without being intruded upon. Um, that's something that got mentioned in the PDF when I was reading through it. Was like they create webs, and if you go into their home, you might get caught in it, and it just felt very much like the Black Widow type scenario from like murder mysteries and things like that. So I like that. I called out the troublemakers here within the family, calling out the parasites who are the elders. But then I also added in the parasites' obedient children, who I called either obedient children, flies, or spider food. Basically, they're the type of people who would sacrifice other younger people to feed to the elders, to the parasites, in order to avoid being eaten themselves. I talked about their territory being JP here, and that they have a safe house in some of the older buildings. I do want to make sure that I don't show the relic off for this one, just because it is a word for word copy, except for like the overall description here of the shadow armor from the manuscript. Shadow form armor was something I thought was very interesting because basically it reshapes to the form that the user needs it for. So it offers a level of protection, but it can like hide. You can hide it as being like fashionable clothing and things of that nature. So these were the 3 documents that I created for my players. So hopefully that gives you like kind of an overview of like, if you want to do this for your players, you can do it too. It didn't take me too long to do these. I think I got most of this stuff out within like 30 minutes for each one. And honestly, I didn't fill out a lot of the information because some information came out like I was like inspired and like, oh yeah, this is totally what's gonna work for my game. But sometimes that just doesn't happen. So don't feel bad if you haven't figured something out yet, because maybe talking to your players, you'll have notes and things that come to you. My plan is to do 10 or 11 sessions, I think. When our game is taking place, it's going to be an actual play on Onyx Path's Twitch, and what I'm going to end up doing is doing it so that the players are like so it's going to be on Onyx Path's Twitch, but it's going to occur during Onyx PathCon at some point. So during Onyx PathCon, I'm probably not going to have my Accursed in Boston sessions streaming. I might talk to someone about that depending on how we're feeling about things. I'm going to have another obligation that weekend to run a game, hopefully, or at least play in a couple of games because I love doing that too. In any case, Lava Bean. Do any of the factions have any relation to other StoryPath Ultra products? Some of these factions sound like antagonist groups that would fit in. They came from. There aren't any that I think really cross over. I did ask on the Discord for Onyx Path if there are any if there are any antagonists from other game lines that could be converted over to Curseborne, and they came from Camp Murder Lake came up, and they came from Beyond the Grave also did. And of course, The World Below just came out too, which has a lot of sort of like body horror type enemies, like mushroom parasites and things of that nature. So I was like very enamored by that and bringing that into my game. I'm really excited to do that. As far as like base, there isn't really crossover. Oh yeah, there have been crossover references in some of Onyx Path's game. I know the Earthbane cycle referentiates a lot because you have the At the Gates and The World Below are like somewhere along the timeline. One is before the other, or maybe they are part of a cycle that repeats. I don't see any enemy types repeating, which I think is good, but I do feel as though you could bring them in if you want. Because to me, the Earthbane cycle setting could easily be a parallel world in the outside, so you could definitely bring in creatures from at the gates or the world below and bring them into Earth, in my opinion. Into Curseborne, rather. Uh, Other than that, I'm trying to think. There's some crazy antagonists. The the family types themselves, I don't know offhand, just because I haven't really dug into the world below, really. You do have situations where there are zombies and stuff like that in Curseborne, and you do have zombies in They Came From Beyond the Grave. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm still trying to like suss out what to do for my game. I do have my three players, Chaz, Charlotte, and Simon. I'm coming up with questions to ask them. I do know what their family lineages and stuff like that. Chaz is playing the House Bathory. Charlotte's playing the Eight Hands, and Simon's playing the Battleground. Angel, I don't know yet if their family is on good term, if they're on good terms with their family, or if they are a black sheep. Is your character blood related to the family, adopted or conscripted, and things of that nature? That stuff I think we can flesh out a little bit. Another question I had, which is something I've been asking around on Reddit and things of that nature, is like, what type of characters do you want to play in Curseborne, which is a little bit more abstract of a question. Because for me, for D&D, you're playing adventurers, regardless of if you're being a freedom fighter or anything of that nature. But when it comes to like a modern day setting, you're typically playing as investigators. So for Curseborne, in my mind, it's, oh yeah, you're going to be investigating haunted houses, murders, or political intrigue that's happening between your families. But then if you're investigating political intrigue, it's not really investigation, it's more like you are being socialites and things of that nature. So it's like trying to balance those questions, and like what brings the group together is a big important question that needs to be brought up. I know in one of my groups, when I did Changeling the Lost, they wanted to basically be part of a detective agency that was built around locating lost children and adults and missing persons cases, basically, because they had all been changelings who were kidnapped. So if people go missing, that might mean something like a fae has come around to kidnap them. Additionally, we had the when I did Werewolf the Forsaken, my players were being packmates who were defining their territory, so it was kind of like a settlement building type game. And what was the other one? For my mage game, they were all students at a school, which I had called the Academy of Mages game that I did, which if you're on my Patreon, I just posted the final episode. I'm sorry it took so long. I had to edit all the audio so that it worked properly. Even still, some stuff fell through the cracks, and I apologize. Hopefully, next time I do an actual play for Chronicles of Darkness, I balance the audio a lot better. And then going back to Curseborne, because I have played a couple of games of that, it has been like representatives of the various families coming together to form a alliance. So they were like ambassadors for their family. And then we had investigators of a missing persons case because their friend went missing. Part of a caveat with Curseborne is that when you're accursed, bad things tend to happen around you. So like it's sort of like a like fate binding in Scion where, oh yeah, you're the plot's going to happen to you because you guys are accursed, and that's sort of how fate works around you, or in this case, curses work around you. I kind of like the idea of mixing Scion and Curseborne, especially at the lower levels, because it could work out that Scions are fate based, and it's usually like good luck or mythical narratives that they follow, whereas Curseborne characters tend to fall into like bad luck, good luck situations. Lava Bean. The factions remind me of organized crime drama, like something from Sons of Anarchy. Yeah, that reminded me. Like, it definitely reminds me of like crime dramas and things of that nature. Especially like I watched Supernatural, and there's a failed backdoor pilot to, I forget what they called it, but it was going to be essentially supernatural families in, I think it was Chicago, and there were going to be 5 factions, and it was going to be like the vampires, werewolves, Jinn, and something else, and I can't remember it. And that was sort of like they were all like criminal organizations. And of course, you have like a lot of urban fantasy shows that kind of came and went in one season or another. You had some of the more popular ones like Lost Girl, which lasted for like 6 seasons, maybe 5. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel, so it was probably 5, because they usually, spoiler alert for sci-fi shows, that Sci-Fi Channel usually only renewed shows for 5 seasons, because at the 5th season, I think the studios would have to renew the contract, and usually the company, the studio that was working with them would ask for more money, and they saw it as a like bad return on investment, essentially. Because why would you pay for a show that's already hit its prime when you could get a new show that hasn't hit its prime yet? I'm fiddling with Lego pieces. I just broke it. I played around with the planning for my session. I came up with various different plots here. I mentioned a little bit about my previous game that was set in Boston, Family Feud. Not sure how it's going to factor in yet. I did want to have some stuff here in case the players go in the investigator path, which it's likely they're going to go investigator, honestly, because if you're playing a game like this, mysteries just sort of whoop you in. I don't know if that's the proper term. In any case, one of the ones that I'm really focusing in on right now is the face collector, who's someone who steals people's faces to try and pretend to be human, but even though they might be able to animate the human face, it still looks like a mannequin that just has like this half of a person's face on it with blood coming down from the sides, which is not realistic. So like they'll talk, but they're creepy, and if you look, and you're gonna notice it usually, unless they're like made up a bit more. So I'm really like settling in on that as like the first encounter for them to go up against. I do have, and I think I lingered on the page where I wrote down like the background information for that a little bit too much, but that's something I'm interested in. I did have a bunch of creepypasta stuff here that I was trying to write down of various things, like an algorithm that gets mixed in with a supernatural entity, like a ghost, like a possessed algorithm that is walking around. I called it "You Can Call Me Al," and the person is named Al. My wife called me out on it because we had just watched Doctor Who, where spoiler, minor spoiler, maybe, that was a plot point, was something similar. So I might have to adjust that. In any case, the other one was This Show Never Existed, which is Madeline's Block, which is based on a show I watched as a kid called Eureka's Castle, and another one which was Allegra's Window. It was like this um, character's name and then a location, and it's a puppet show about this little puppet girl who lives in a friendly neighborhood, but there are various entities that teach the opposite of what children should be taught. I wanted to go into a little bit more detail there, so I had a variety of different ideas for characters. I did want to do a police officer, but then I felt it was like too on the nose. Boston area has constant smell of natural gas from leaky old gas pipes. Could do something with that. That's possible. I can definitely do that. I did have a coworker who had to actually abandon their house for a little bit because of a gas leak that happened in their neighborhood. It's crazy. Oh, you're in Boston area too, Lava Bean? Awesome. Yeah, it's a fun area. I like going down there. There's something about every city, I think, where there's this during something with the sewer system where like the sewer like the water in the sewer oxidizes or something, like evaporates or something, depending on the time of day. Anyway, but yeah, I decided to create these puppet characters called the Terrors, which are the like more crazy creatures that are teaching these terrible lessons. So like you have Teacher Dearest, who is a spider-like puppet that will eat children who don't listen to her lectures, and then Dr. Tooth Decay, who is a dentist that steals teeth from children in order to steal money from the Tooth Fairy and things of that nature. So you get into a little bit of the Candle Cove type stuff. Oh no, I'm sorry, the house you used to live in burned down from a gas leak. Oh, before I lived there. Okay, okay. Wait, I got a little bit confused, but I think I got what you're saying. I apologize. I'm glad you're all right. The last character type I had here was the man in the shadow, which is kind of like this silhouette of a man that is never moving when you're looking at them, but when you look away, they get closer to you by at least a yard. Once they get within arm's reach, the shadow drags you into a liminal space, and the only way to get the man away from you is by getting someone else to speak to him. Also inspired a little bit by Doctor Who. Not entirely. Oh, okay. You lived in it after it was rebuilt. That's good. That's good. I got into like the thing about Boston that I really liked, and I used in my Chronicles of Boston game when I ran that for Chronicles of Darkness, was the idea of the Big Dig. And I do mention in this document here where essentially Boston at one point had a lot of problems with traffic, and there was this huge public works project to build better infrastructure for getting people through the city, known as the Big Dig. I think it was vastly expensive. Sorry, overly expensive, and ended up like kind of being a disaster in a little bit, but it at least works. um, in any case, there's a lot of tunnels that were built, and most of them are like publicly accessible. They're subway tunnels. There's highway tunnels and things of that nature. But you'll see in the tunnels when you're going through them doors that lead into like maintenance ducts and stuff like that. Bingus Dingus. Okay. I don't know what Bingus Dingus is, but that's an interesting phrase. So you get these access tunnels and things of that nature. They're probably used by engineers and technicians who have to service the tunnels and cables and things. So going under, Biggest Diggus being the Big Dig. Gotcha. So yeah, the Big Dig like basically created this underground network of tunnels, which aren't as vast as I like to run them, but is definitely like good inspiration for that type of urban exploration scenario I like. I typically and um I didn't create any locked liminalities, liminal spaces being sort of like these pocket dimensions that exist in Curseborne. That is the first time I've heard Biggest Diggest being referred to it. Dante and Crew, Life of Brian reference. Yeah, that is definitely. It feels very like a Life of Brian reference, which I learned recently was the extras for that were new to that scene and were told to not laugh at anything that was said or they'd be carted off. And so they were thrown into the fire as they were making that joke in front of them for the first time as Roman soldiers, centurions. And they actually did get pulled off the set by other extras who were the people who were in rehearsals. So it created more open liminalities for the game. I have Hollywood videos. Liminal spaces are a little bit harder to describe. So there is, you know how in horror movies you go to a haunted house and like reality kind of bends in a way? That's basically what liminal spaces are. The term liminal space is used in other discussions outside of Dungeons and Dragons. It's used in like horror, sci-fi. Liminal space just sort of means an in-between location. So you're in between two areas. In this case, it's between dimensions. So you have the real world, and then you have the realm known as the outside. And where they cross over create these crazy, haunted, like supernaturally possessed locations. Lava Bean. I-93 has an exit to nowhere that was meant for the canceled I-695 highway project. I did not know that. There are multiple types of liminal spaces, or liminalities as they're called. There are locked liminalities, which are basically they have some way of opening them. Think of it like a fairy circle where if you like cut some blood, cut yourself and put some blood in the circle, it lets you in. Things of that nature. There's usually a cost to enter them. Then you have open liminalities where it's easy to access, but that access might be restricted to certain things like the time of day, the personal traits of the individual trying to go through them. So, like a redhead might be able to go through, or someone who identifies as male or female, things of that nature. Then you have interstitial zones, which are locations that no one has any emotional attachment to that want emotional attachment. So they make themselves sort of like a Venus flytrap attracting flies. They make themselves look appealing so that they get victims to get near them and try and trick people into staying there forever. You have battlegrounds, which is where the outside bleeds into reality. And this is where the creatures known as outsiders are like trying to create footholds into our reality. What's a good example of it? I guess Evil Dead, maybe, with like how the Deadites were trying to get into the world through the Necronomicon in the cabin. That might be a good analogy. There might be a better analogy, like I guess Ghostbusters. Uh, Zool create there's the tower that was created, Shandor's Ego Shandor's tower, I think, the apartment building. I Dante and crew. I see the VHS. So, like, theoretically, if someone got sucked into a movie within an alternate space, would that be considered a liminal space? Yes. So the movie itself would be considered a liminal space. If you got sucked into it, that might be what would be the next location, which is the shattered spaces, which are places that are designed to basically drain the life force of people who enter them. And then you have epochs, which are specific time periods that are locked away from the current timeline. So think of an example would be like, to use the the analogy for being sucked into a VHS tape, Pleasantville. They got sucked into a 1950s era movie. That would probably be an epoch. It is a part of a specific time period that was locked away from reality. Boston needs a lost road that is just lined with Dunkin' Donuts locations. It's so funny to me that people think of Dunkin' Donuts as a New England thing, because I always had Dunkin' Donuts around me, like in New Jersey, where I'm from originally. And that's not New England. That is Mid-Atlantic. Dante and crew. Epochs, like forbidden knowledge almost. Uh, oh, no. I think you see it now. Yes. Yeah, epochs are kind of like you walk down an alley and find yourself in the middle of World War II, or you are you I think a good example would probably be if you know time splinters from Demon the Descent, but not many people use those. My example that I liked for open liminalities was Hollywood videos, where if anything gets recorded to VHS tape, you can get it from Hollywood videos. But the only way you can get it is if you are able to get a gumball with a free rental on it from the gumball machine. And I liked having a Gen X Jack Black type guy running the Hollywood video store, because these liminal spaces are interesting to run. Oh yeah, Dunkin' Donuts is from Quincy. I was in Quincy the other day and I passed by the original Dunkin' Donuts, which was crazy. I did the Fairy Godmother Boutique. I really like that one. An idea of having a place that can get you the perfect outfit for any event. Dante and crew. See, I like the idea of what you said with a version of reality that was locked away from the prime or present reality. So that's why you made me think like forbidden knowledge thing. Yeah, like if it was something akin to like, oh yeah, they did some forbidden research in this location, that could totally be a reality separate from our own, I would think. The interstitial zones, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it a bit. The examples they have for them in the book sometimes overlap with shattered spaces, because shattered spaces like don't kidnap people, but they kill them. And the interstitial zone that they have an example of is, I think, Wonderland, which is a theme park that presents itself as like Alice in Wonderland. And they take people who visit them and disappear them, and it's like once every few years, like once every year a person goes missing scenario, which kind of makes sense. I decided to go with the empty attic as one because where I grew up in near the Palisades Mall, they literally had what is known as the space known as the empty attic, which was this location in the Palisades Mall that they weren't supposed to build. The Palisades Mall was supposed to be 3 stories, but they decided to make it 4 stories. And they were going to have the movie theater, but there was an entire another section that they added on that the town didn't approve of. So the town said you can still have that location there because you built it, but it has to be empty. There can't be anything in there except for stuff that the town could use. So in that section of the mall is just empty storefront areas that are like have signs in them for community events in the town and an ice rink. But ignore the ice rink. So what I decided was the empty attic is the section that has been cordoned off from the rest of the mall that is supposed to be used for nothing, not even storage. But there is like this hipster mall that has taken over in there, and the people who run it are like occult book dealers and things of that nature. And that way we can have a little bit of a sort of haunted location where, oh, every once in a while people go in and they sell their souls to get some powerful artifact or something. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they do the old I wish I was never born type thing, and then they poof out of existence. Battlegrounds I'm really struggling with a lot of the time, because the battlegrounds that they give examples for in the book are kind of like, oh yeah, it is very inhuman. It is literally like you go into a mirror universe of reality where everything's made out of flesh and things of that nature. There are a few sections in town where roads have been raised up a story or two, and the old storefronts for buildings are now underground. Downtown Chicago is the same way. That's crazy. I did not know that. The so I put the Big Below as sort of like the underground like battleground that is in there, which is connected to the Big Dig. Last thing I did was the Shattered Space called the Lady Luck Casino, because that was something that really drew me into Shattered Spaces. Was they feed off of people who enter them, and it's usually easy to get out. So I like the idea of the Lady Luck Casino where you're always just one step away from hitting it big, but you'll never hit it big, and it'll drain energy from you. I don't know if these locations are going to be used in my game, but I definitely like figuring them out, writing them down, and maybe I'll put them into a book when Curseborne goes into Storypath Nexus. I just want to shout out to all the 4 people who are watching currently. You guys hit the max number of people right now that are on my stream for this particular stream, and I appreciate it. Next time, I will definitely schedule this out a lot better, and hopefully I'll have a full video planned at some point this week. It's getting a little bit late. It is 10 o'clock in my area. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good one. If you have any suggestions on what I should do next for my campaign planning, please let me know in the comments of this video, or we can figure something else out. Maybe I'll put in a community post or something, and you can answer that. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good one. Oh, Matthew Perkins. Is this D&D or another game? Here's a suggestion. Layla Casino. Auto reroll any 19s. You're so close to a crit. Oh, Curseborne is a game by Onyx Path Publishing. It uses the Storypath system, which is a D10 system. So you're using a dice pool of 10-sided dice. I would say it's kind of like a spiritual successor to World of Darkness, Vampire the Masquerade, or Chronicles of Darkness, if you're familiar with those games. And Lava Bean, West Roxbury has a giant stone quarry that might make a great location. I know about that because I used to live next to West Roxbury, and that quarry was close enough that I would hear the alarm when they set off the blasts. I still get texts from them because I haven't figured out how to get off that list. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Any questions, please put them in the comments below. I'll happily answer them. Make sure you don't put them in the live chat right now because I'm going to miss it.